The left isn't making you like abandon your family necessarily. They're making you fight with your family.
Well, I got to pause you there.
They're not making you abandon your family. They're making
prominent left personalities have said, cut off your family. Even on MSNBC, they've said, don't show up to Thanksgiving. Was it Jen Psaki who was like, don't go to Thanksgiving with your family if they support Trump or something? Maybe it wasn't her, but this is MSNBC.
Sure, I imagine that there
we saw a wave of this after 2016 when he got elected the first time, which admittedly I wasn't paying as much attention then. And honestly, I followed a little bit more of your kind of line. I actually followed you a lot more in like 2018 because I was also like coming from the left around 2016, getting into politics when I started a family and stuff. You saw a wave of people getting, all this pushback saying not to, just what you're saying, not to talk to your family. All these videos, and then now again you're seeing the same thing on TikTok. Waves of them after the election.
Who's that one?
I stopped talking to my family because
sure, but we don't use
they voted for X.
We have to be really cautious, right? So as somebody who's on the left, right, who is friends with lots of people on the left, grew up fundamentalist right, by the way. I don't cut off anyone in my life. I have lots of conservative family. I would never cut them off. I'm very close to my neighbor who is a dogged libertarian.
Yeah, but the exception doesn't make the rule.
No,
we're talking in general.
This is my argument, right? There are loud, squeaky wheels that we need to do on the left a better job of policing. It is better if the left goes, hold on, that's crazy. Okay, we don't agree with this. The left's problem is that we don't kick out our extreme left, not that the extreme left represents the broad group. The problem with the left, especially my side, is that we're kind of cowardly and soft and status quo. And so we don't speak up to our extreme fringe left, which is why like the far left progressives have so much more ability to speak, despite the fact that they're like actual like functional policies are only like pretty weakly represented within the Democratic Party. The Biden-Obama party is the strong party within the Democrat Party.
So how do you define what left means? What does it mean to be on the left?
I mean, it's like spectrumal, right? But like essentially you're probably going to be pro-welfare state. You're probably going to be pro like trans, gay, LGBTQ. So you're going to be like economically and socially left by and large.
So, but you use left in the definition. So pro-trans.
Sure. So yeah, when I use left in the definition because I think we know, but like when I say socially left, it's usually like you're chill with gay people getting married. You don't really care if trans people exist.
What does that mean? You don't care if trans people exist?
Like you're probably going to support them transitioning, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Economic left would be welfare state. You're going to be pro-social safety net, and you're probably going to be pro-regulation of the market. Right? These are typically what we view as left policies.
What about, I mean, there are people on the right that are trans themselves, are pro-adults being allowed to trans and do whatever they want. They're pro-welfare state. Mm-hmm. They're moderate on abortion, but they're still called right.
Well, there's kind of two problems. One is that politics has devolved. I mean, I get called right by a lot of like further left people. I'm obviously not right. So if you want to have, the issue is I can talk to you about the far left and I can talk to you about the liberals and like the space that I'm a part of. And so whichever one you want me to like speak to, I can. In my group, I would say, I'm not sure. You're probably somewhere politically on the spectrum on like moderate, maybe shifting right. I don't know like all of your policies necessarily, but you'd probably be somewhere in the moderate like center space. But performatively, they're going to feel like you were demonstrably right-wing, particularly if your audience is demonstrably right-wing. The way that the far left would view that is that you're far right because they don't even think the Democrat Party is truly left, right?
So here's let's start here. Like we're talking about young men wanting to adhere to reality. They're tired of being told there are 5 lights when there are 4, and the trans issue is a really great example. It relates to the broader political correctness, but you can't get your average left liberal, I mean both, even a member of Congress, to define woman.
Yeah.
If you're a young guy entering the political space and you see an interaction where a woman says to another woman in Congress, what is a woman? And well, I'm not a biologist. I can't answer that. You're a young guy going, what the fuck?
Sure.
Now, I think for young women, they're saying, I think women are motivated by social hierarchy and social order. Women are subject-oriented on average. Men are object-oriented on average. Mm-hmm. So that's why I think we get this divide. Young men say, that is insane, whereas women say, you're speaking out against the group, against the collective.
Well, and it's a bit of a joke, too, to say, men are more rational. But it is true that men are more pragmatic. They're more based in logic and reason. And women can operate a little more emotionally. And so I think they're in fear of hurting the feelings. Like even, I've had discussions with like close, female friends of mine, and we have, children, and we're discussing things like this. And they're also afraid of what their children are going to grow up in, what their children are going to be taught, because the leaders of society can't even define, what things are, based off of what you're saying.
Pure inconsistencies, like 10-year-olds can't get tattoos but can get puberty blockers. Right. And so when you ask, like, what's the logic of not telling children they can't permanently alter their bodies when they're minors, except in this one instance. Additionally, you said that one of the things about being left is you're going to be okay with transition and things like this. Then you have the question from young guys and from people in general, why is this the one DSM-5 disorder that we affirm and the others we don't? And there's no answers for this.
Well, there is an answer. It's because transition seems to reduce suicidality by 60%.
False.
It's not false. This is like repeated on.
Define suicidality.
Suicidality is in attempts.
That's incorrect.
It's not incorrect. This is unquestionable.
Chase, what was the Supreme Court argument from the ACLU? Did you listen to that? Mm-mm. The ACLU's lawyer said, in fact, it does not, to the Supreme Court. And so what we look at is, here's where I'm at. Don't know, don't care about whatever the DSM mental disorder is, be anorexia, bulimia, pica, don't care. What's the treatment? We find that the existing scientific research says that desistance rates, not detransition, desistance, where a child who is trans entering puberty simply desists from being trans, is greater than chance. Some estimates between 65 to 90%. Mm-hmm. Suicidal ideation is around 37 to 40% among people who do transition. That would imply there is a greater possibility to reduce suicidal ideation by not intervening with medical treatment. That's
the other option is actually to affirm the birth-given gender. I tried to look up some studies for this, and I don't think there's ever been any studies done where they're specifically on people who have body dysmorphia or trans, ideology or whatever, and think they're another gender and are trying to transition, being given the testosterone if they're male and estrogen if they're female. But there are studies that have been done that are given to patients who have depression, and I'm pretty sure there's a handful of studies that were double blind where they give them testosterone or estrogen and it decreases their depression rates.
Sure. So this is where I want to go back to this timeline conversation, right? I'm not here interested in defending the crazy left. Most of my career was spent fighting them, right? I fought most of these people most of my career because I believe that if the left wants to represent anything, they need to have a strong back. They need to believe in something, and they need to kick out their extremists, right? And I think that the left failed to do that. The issue is that a lot of people are looking at the left and right, and they're looking 2016 to now, and they're not looking at, say, 2016 to 1970.
Yeah, but you would consider yourself to be probably in support of that position, right?
Which position?
About, gender-affirming care.
It depends on what you mean when you say gender
for children
care.
Specifically.
By and large, I'm pretty skeptical about the process by which we properly evaluate children.
Generally support it, though, right?
If it's managed better, right now, I think it's too experimental. I think it's
you're right wing.
But you separate yourself from the left, the extreme left, and as a more of a lay person, sort of on the right. I mean, that's extreme left to me.
What I mean,
even considering.
I don't even think you've gotten to what I'm saying, though. Right? The issue is that we can talk about the far left, and I'm probably just going to agree with you that there's a lot of crazies. The timeline conversation that we need to have is we need to remember what it was like from 1990 to 2016 when the right had a lot of strong cultural war. I remember growing up in a very conservative idea where evolution was viewed as evil and bad and anti-everything when this is an anti-science perspective that was dominant on the right. And it feels like we've forgotten about this. I grew up in a school where parents were advocating to remove any mention of evolution, any mention of adaptions over time. They just wanted to basically cut out a large portion of biological science. And so while I agree that the left won the culture war in 2016, well, they canceled their opponents off of it mostly, and they did a lot of bad stuff. And they went too far. I would just agree with that. The issue is that I'm still fundamentally left because my principles and my policies fall left. And I believe in a party, whatever party it is, that stands up for those things that I value.
Which specific, so outside of the crazy left stuff, what particularly would you look for in a party?
Strong institutions.
What does that mean?
Strong institutions means institutions that are effective, that are power balanced, and are reactive with speed.
What does this mean, like the FBI or the Federal Reserve? What institutions do you mean?
Most of them. So like most of the institutions that I think that we've erected are by and large pretty good. I think there's good reason for them, though I don't know all
The FBI.
Sure, but I don't know like all of the history for it. I'm willing to basically grant that I'm not smarter than like 200 years of American institutional development to just assume that I know better than the FBI necessarily, right?
No, I'm not trying to, it's not a gotcha. I mean, like when you say the institutions, does it mean universities? Does it mean the post?
Universities, healthcare, the three branches of the government, the central banking, the
Central banking, wow.
the NGO that exists to kind of like counterbalance and third party check certain things. So when I talk about the institutions, I'm talking broadly about most of the institutions. The CDC,
but I think you recognize many of them grow corrupt over a long period of time, right?
Right. So this would be my counter. On the left, we say strong institutions, and the problem is that I think a lot of them have become rigid. And I don't know if you know much about metalsmithing, but there's this idea. But there's this idea when you're building swords, for example, you need to have a strong sword. It needs to be both flexible and strong. So if it's too hard and not flexible, it'll break, right? And if it's too flexible but not hard enough, it'll bend. And so when I say strong institutions, I mean basically the properly crafted sword. It needs to be flexible enough to react to stuff, which I think proceduralism has killed our flexibility, but it needs to be strong enough to withstand people who might want to attack the Constitution, people who might want to be corrupt, which most people that enter politics are probably somewhat corrupt to some degree, right? It needs to be able to withstand these things with the assumption of what incentive structures do to human nature.
So who did you vote for in 2024?
I'm not American, so.
Oh, you're not American?
No.
Oh, you Canadian?
I'm Canadian.
All these Canadians coming to our country trying to influence our politics.
Yeah,
Important to
true.
think about.
To do.
Okay, who'd you vote for in Canada? Trudeau?
I didn't vote in this last election because I haven't been in the country for like almost 2 years.
Okay. Yeah. So
Before that was Aaron O'Toole, who's a conservative. Before that was NDP.
you voted for a conservative?
Yep, I vote all. In Canada, we don't have this like.
Yeah, you vote for a party, don't you?
Well, we have like 6, right? It's less culturally baked in that like if you're a conservative, you're always conservative, forever conservative. Like most people in Canada will vote like maybe NDP locally. At a provincial level, they might vote like Liberal, and then at a federal level, they might vote like something else, right? Like that's pretty standard in Canada.
So U.S.-wise, you would probably still find yourself aligned with the Democratic Party.
Yeah, theoretically, if I had been able to vote and I was American, I probably would have voted for
This is what I can't understand. I mean, by all means, criticize the Trump administration, whatever, I don't care. The Obama administration, I'm not going to speak to anyone before when I like Bill Clinton, I can say very little about. I was a child. But I can say that Bush sucked and violated the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Obama sucked, violated the Constitution, and we can go into great detail how. And Joe Biden and his administration was probably the most egregious violation of constitutional norms and our institutions that I've ever seen in my life.
Sure, and then now we have like 2024 Trump, who I would argue is like also violating the Constitution, like pretty openly. And so I guess my question to you would be, I don't really want to participate in any of this. First of all, if I was an American, I'd be voting in my midterms and my primaries and my locals, right? Not just my federal, which most people don't even do. Most people that complain about their politics don't even vote at their primaries, which is how you get the nuance in your own party. If you're mad, like this is what I say to leftists, if you're mad that the Democrats don't represent you, vote in your primaries. If you're not voting in your primaries, you'll never get represented at a federal level. Like, what are you even talking about?
There's a word for this when someone believes in voting to change things that the left uses. I forgot what it was.
Probably a stupid liberal.
It's like it's like votarian, or like it's some word like that, voterist or something. A person who believes that voting will change a system.
I believe in democracy, right? And I think democracy is the best system we've arrived at thus far. Not because I think democracy is a fundamental good, or capitalism. I think that they are two systems that we have created that take incentive structures that almost make people always do bad shit, power, money, greed, and it has, with those incentive structures, made the best country with the most human rights and the most flourishing in all of human history.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Culture War podcast. We're live every Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, so subscribe and come hang out.